In the middle of a relentless snowstorm, with freezing winds cutting through the forest, can you imagine anything more heartbreaking than the sound of faint cries in the distance? Who could be so cruel as to abandon 5 tiny golden retriever puppies, trembling and exhausted, in a battered old cardboard box? These helpless creatures, left to fight against the bitter cold, teeter on the edge of survival. But will they find a glimmer of hope in time, or has fate already sealed their tragic end? What unfolds next will not only bring tears to your eyes, but reveal the extraordinary courage of a few kind-hearted souls determined to make a difference. The snowstorm had painted the forest in shades of white and gray, muffling every sound except for the whispers of the wind. Max, Lily, and Ben trudged through the knee-deep snow, their boots crunching beneath them as they explored their usual play area. For them, the forest was a sanctuary, a place of endless adventures where the tall pines seemed to tell stories of old. But today something felt different. The cold was biting, the silence unnerving. Then it happened. "Did you hear that?" Lily stopped abruptly, clutching the edge of her red scarf as her wide blue eyes scanned the snow-covered trees. "Hear what?" Max asked, brushing snow off his jacket. His messy brown hair was flecked with tiny white flakes, and his green eyes narrowed in focus. "That sound," Lily insisted, her voice trembling slightly. Ben, the youngest of the group, adjusted his fogged-up glasses. "It sounded like crying," he offered hesitantly. The 3 froze, listening intently. And then they heard it, a faint, pitiful whimper, so soft it was almost drowned out by the wind. The sound tugged at something deep within them, an instinct to protect. Without hesitation, Max took the lead. "This way," he said firmly, motioning for the others to follow. The sound grew louder as they ventured deeper into the woods, their breath visible in the frosty air. It led them to the base of an old oak tree, where a battered cardboard box lay partially buried under a blanket of snow. The box was soaked, its edges caving in from the weight of the ice, and inside 5 tiny golden retriever puppies were huddled together, trembling and whimpering. "Oh my gosh!" Lily gasped, dropping to her knees in the snow. "Look at them! They're freezing!" The puppies were a heartbreaking sight. Their once golden coats were matted and damp, clinging to their frail little bodies. One of them, smaller than the rest, seemed too weak to lift its head. Another nudged its sibling gently, as if urging it to stay awake. Max's jaw tightened. "Who would do this?" he muttered, anger flashing in his eyes. Ben hesitated before stepping closer. "Do you think they were abandoned?" he asked quietly. Lily gently reached into the box, her hands trembling as she lifted the tiniest puppy into her arms. Its body was alarmingly cold, and it let out a weak cry that broke her heart. "They're just babies," she whispered. "They won't survive out here." As they inspected the box, Max's gaze fell on something scrawled in messy handwriting along one of the damp flaps. The words, barely legible, read, "Save them." "Save them?" Max read aloud, his voice filled with confusion. "What does that even mean? Who left them here?" Lily's voice cracked as she spoke. "Does it matter? We have to do something. We can't just leave them." Ben nodded, his shyness giving way to urgency. "Lily's right. They'll freeze to death if we don't help." Max took a deep breath, glancing between the fragile puppies and the snowstorm that was growing fiercer by the minute. "Okay," he said, his voice steady. "We'll take them to Dr. Ethan. He'll know what to do." The journey back to town felt like an eternity. Each of them carried 1 or 2 puppies, cradling them close to their bodies for warmth. The puppies barely moved, their tiny breaths shallow and uneven. Lily whispered words of comfort to the smallest one, tears streaming down her cheeks as she begged it to hold on. "Just a little longer," she murmured. "You're going to be okay." Max led the way, his heart pounding with worry. He couldn't shake the image of the scrawled words from his mind. Save them. It wasn't just a plea. It felt like a desperate cry for help from someone who had no other choice. But why abandon them in the middle of nowhere, in the freezing cold? None of it made sense. By the time they reached Dr. Ethan's clinic, the storm was howling. The small veterinary office, tucked away at the edge of town, glowed warmly through the frosted windows. Max banged on the door, his urgency clear. Dr. Ethan, a kind-hearted man in his 50s with graying hair and a neatly trimmed beard, opened the door almost immediately. His eyes widened at the sight of the children and the trembling puppies in their arms. "What happened?" he asked, ushering them inside. "We found them in the woods," Max explained quickly. "They were left in a box. They're freezing, and one of them is really weak." Dr. Ethan didn't waste a second. He directed them to a large table in the clinic and began examining each puppy carefully. His hands were gentle but efficient, checking their temperature, heart rate, and overall condition. "This one's severely dehydrated," he said, pointing to the smallest puppy. "Tiny," as Lily had already named it in her mind. "And all of them are malnourished. They'll need warmth, fluids, and constant care." Lily clutched Tiny tightly, her voice shaking. Will they make it?" Dr. Ethan looked at her with a reassuring smile. "They've got a chance now, thanks to you kids. But it's going to take some work." The clinic became a flurry of activity. Dr. Ethan prepared warm blankets and heated pads, while Max and Ben helped set up bowls of water and special formula. Lily refused to let go of Tiny, rocking it gently in her arms, as if her love alone could keep it alive. As the night wore on, the puppies began to show small signs of improvement. Their shivers lessened, their breathing steadied, and one by one they started to nuzzle into the warmth of their blankets. But questions lingered in the air, unspoken but heavy. "Who could do something like this?" Ben finally asked, breaking the silence. "Leaving them out there like they didn't matter." Max frowned, his jaw clenched. "I don't know. But whoever it was, at least they cared enough to save them." Lily looked down at Tiny, her fingers gently stroking its soft fur. "Do you think they'll ever be okay?" she asked quietly. Dr. Ethan, who had been tending to Sunny, the brightest coated of the bunch, looked up. "Animals are resilient," he said. "With a little love and care, they can overcome almost anything." As the storm raged outside, the clinic felt like a haven, filled with the soft sounds of breathing puppies and the quiet determination of 3 kids who refused to give up on them. For Max, Lily, and Ben, the night marked the beginning of something far bigger than they could have imagined. A journey of compassion, courage, and uncovering the truth about those who had cried out for help, not with words, but through 5 tiny lives left in the snow. The warm light of Dr. Ethan's clinic glowed against the backdrop of the raging snowstorm outside. Inside, the atmosphere was tense but hopeful. Max, Lily, and Ben stood in silence, watching as Dr. Ethan worked diligently to assess the condition of each of the 5 tiny golden retriever puppies. The faint whimpers of the pups filled the room, a reminder of the urgency of the situation. Dr. Ethan began his examination with the largest and most robust of the group, a puppy whose golden coat still held a faint sheen despite the dirt and dampness. "This one's a fighter," he remarked, running a gentle hand over its fur. "I think we'll call this one Sunny, for the bright light it carries even in a storm like this." Lily smiled faintly, her hand still cradling the smallest puppy in the group. "Sunny, that's perfect," she murmured. As Dr. Ethan moved to the next puppy, Max watched closely, his green eyes narrowing with concern. This one had darker golden fur and a posture that seemed sturdier than the rest. "And this one," Dr. Ethan continued, "has a spark of courage. Let's call it Brave." Max nodded, his admiration for the tiny creature growing. "Yeah, Brave suits it." When Dr. Ethan reached the 3rd puppy, his expression softened. It was clear this one was smaller and more fragile than the first 2. Its fur was a lighter golden, and it seemed to cling to its siblings for warmth and protection. "This one," he said, glancing at Lily, "might need a little extra care. We'll call it Lucky." Ben, who had been quietly observing, asked, "Why Lucky? It doesn't seem lucky at all." Dr. Ethan chuckled softly. "Sometimes just surviving a situation like this is luck enough. And with all of you looking after them, I'd say they're pretty lucky. The fourth puppy was curled tightly into a ball, its tiny frame trembling despite the warmth of the blankets. Dr. Ethan gently stroked its fur. This one has the look of a dreamer, he said thoughtfully. Hope, that's what we'll call it. Lily nodded eagerly. Hope, she repeated, as if the name itself carried magic, because even when things seem impossible, there's always hope. Finally, Dr. Ethan turned his attention to the smallest and weakest of the group, the puppy Lily held in her arms. Its breaths were shallow, its tiny body limp. Tiny, Lily whispered before Dr. Ethan could say anything. This one's name is Tiny. Dr. Ethan smiled gently. Tiny it is, he said, though his face darkened as he carefully examined the little pup. He noticed faint scars on its underbelly and legs, marks that told a story of hardship even at such a young age. What's wrong with Tiny? Lily asked, her voice shaking. Dr. Ethan hesitated before answering. This one has been through more than the others, he said carefully. The scars suggest some form of abuse. Maybe it was hurt or neglected more than the rest. The room fell silent. Max clenched his fists, anger bubbling beneath the surface. How could someone do that, he muttered. To a puppy? To Tiny? Lily's eyes filled with tears as she held Tiny closer, as if her love could erase the pain the little dog had endured. Ben shifted uncomfortably, his usual shyness giving way to a quiet resolve. We can't let anything bad happen to them again, he said softly. Dr. Ethan placed a reassuring hand on Ben's shoulder. You're right, he said. They've already been through so much, but they're resilient. With care and love, they'll heal. Over the next few hours, the clinic became a hive of activity. Dr. Ethan showed the children how to warm the puppies using heating pads and hot water bottles wrapped in blankets. He prepared special milk formula to feed the weakest ones and monitored their progress closely. Lily refused to leave Tiny's side, carefully feeding it with a dropper as it struggled to swallow. Come on, Tiny, she whispered. You're stronger than this. You can do it. Sunny and Brave seemed to recover more quickly, wagging their tiny tails and nuzzling into the warmth of their blankets. Lucky and Hope followed closely behind, their whimpers growing softer as they began to feel safe. But Tiny's condition remained fragile, and every moment felt like a battle. As the night wore on, the children grew quieter, their initial adrenaline giving way to exhaustion. It was then that Dr. Ethan, sensing their need for reassurance, began to share a story. Years ago, he started, his voice calm and steady, I was in a very dark place. My wife had passed away, and I didn't see much point in anything anymore. I had this clinic, but it felt empty without her. The children looked up, their curiosity piqued. One day, someone brought in a stray dog, a golden retriever, just like these pups. It had been hit by a car, badly injured. Most people thought it wouldn't make it, but I decided to try anyway. And in those weeks I spent caring for that dog, something changed. What happened to the dog? Lily asked softly. Dr. Ethan smiled. She survived. I named her Grace. And in saving her, I think she saved me. She gave me a reason to keep going, to find purpose again. That's the thing about animals. They don't just need us. Sometimes we need them even more. The children were silent, the weight of Dr. Ethan's words sinking in. Max glanced at Brave, who had begun to drift off to sleep, and felt a flicker of understanding. These puppies weren't just creatures to be saved. They were lives that could teach them something about strength, love, and healing. I think they're going to be okay, Ben said quietly, breaking the silence. Dr. Ethan nodded. I think you're right. As the storm outside finally began to subside, the clinic was filled with a quiet sense of hope. The puppies, once trembling and helpless, now rested peacefully, their tiny bodies nestled together for warmth. And for Max, Lily, and Ben, the night had become more than just a rescue mission. It was the beginning of a bond they would carry with them forever. The next morning, the snowstorm had settled, leaving the town blanketed in a thick layer of white. Max, Lily, and Ben gathered at Dr. Ethan's clinic, ready to face the daunting task ahead. The puppies, now stable but still fragile, were curled up in a cozy corner of the clinic. Each of them seemed to embody a quiet resilience, but it was clear they couldn't stay at the clinic forever. They needed homes, loving ones. Max stood by the door, his arms crossed and his brow furrowed. "We need to find families for them," he said, determination sharpening his voice. "They deserve better than what they've been through." Lily nodded, clutching her sketchbook tightly. Her face was pale, her mind still haunted by the sight of Tiny's scars. "I can make posters," she offered. "If people see how adorable they are, maybe they'll want to help." "I can take pictures," Ben chimed in hesitantly. "But I don't know if anyone will actually see them." Max turned to him, his expression softening. "Ben, your photos are amazing. People will see them. We just have to try." The group sprang into action. Lily, armed with her sketchbook and a pack of markers, began drawing portraits of each puppy. Sunny with its bright golden coat, Brave standing tall despite its size, Lucky with eyes full of innocence, Hope who seemed to dream even in sleep, and Tiny, the smallest but somehow the most resilient. Her hands shook slightly as she sketched Tiny, the scars etched in her memory. Meanwhile, Ben crouched in the corner with his camera, adjusting the lens to capture the puppies in their most endearing moments. He coaxed Sunny to wag its tail, snapped a shot of brave, nuzzling Hope, and captured Lucky as it tilted its head curiously. But when he aimed the camera at Tiny, his hands faltered. "What's wrong?" Max asked, noticing Ben's hesitation. Ben sighed. "What if no one wants them? What if no one cares?" Max placed a hand on his shoulder. "Someone will. We just have to make sure they see how special these pups are." As Lily and Ben worked, Max approached his parents at home. His mom was in the kitchen pouring a cup of coffee while his dad read the newspaper at the table. "Mom, Dad," Max began, standing awkwardly in the doorway, "I need your help." His dad glanced up from the paper. "What's this about?" Max took a deep breath and launched into the story, finding the puppies, their condition, and the urgency of finding them homes. His mom's eyes softened as he spoke, but his dad's expression remained skeptical. "So you're saying you want us to advertise for these dogs?" his dad asked. "Not advertise," Max corrected quickly. "Just spread the word. Maybe put something in the paper or ask around." His dad sighed, setting the paper down. "Max, I admire what you're trying to do, but this town isn't exactly full of people who can take on 5 dogs. Most folks are already struggling to make ends meet." "But Dad," Max started to argue, his voice rising. "Let him try," his mom interrupted gently, placing a hand on Max's shoulder. "Sometimes people surprise you." By midday, the team regrouped, each bringing their contributions. Lily had created bright, colorful posters with her drawings of the puppies, each one accompanied by a short description and the words, "Looking for a forever home." Ben had uploaded his photos to social media, tagging local groups and animal lovers. And Max had convinced his mom to speak to a neighbor who ran a small town newsletter. Their efforts quickly spread across the town, but not everyone responded the way they'd hoped. As they hung posters along Main Street, an older man stopped to watch them. He shook his head, a disapproving frown on his face. "Kids these days," he muttered, "worrying about dogs when there are real problems out there." Max bit his tongue, his frustration mounting. Lily, too shy to respond, clutched her posters tighter, while Ben avoided eye contact altogether. Later, a woman in the grocery store remarked loudly, "Those pups are cute, sure, but who's going to pay for their food? Vet bills aren't cheap, you know." Max felt the weight of their words pressing down on him. He had taken on the role of leader, but now he questioned if he'd overestimated their ability to make a difference. What if the town didn't care? What if their efforts weren't enough? Meanwhile, Lily struggled with her own inner turmoil. That night, as she lay in bed, her mind replayed the image of Tiny's scars. She couldn't shake the thought that someone had deliberately hurt the puppy. The idea made her stomach churn. "What if they never heal?" she whispered to herself. "What if no one wants Tiny because of what happened?" Her mom, hearing her restless sighs, peeked into the room. "Lily, sweetie, what's wrong?" Lily hesitated before sitting up. "Mom, why would someone hurt a puppy? Tiny is so small and it didn't do anything wrong." Her mom sat beside her, brushing her hair back. "Sometimes people are cruel, sweetheart, but what matters is that you're doing everything you can to give those puppies a better life. Tiny is lucky to have you." The following day, as Max, Lily, and Ben walked through town to hang more posters, Ben finally voiced the doubts he'd been holding in. "What if we're wasting our time? What if no one wants them?" Max stopped in his tracks, turning to face Ben. "We're not wasting our time," he said firmly. "Even if only one person cares, that's enough to make a difference." Lily nodded, her voice quiet but resolute. "And they deserve a chance. Tiny, Hope, all of them. They deserve to feel safe." Ben looked down, guilt flickering across his face. I don't want to fail them." Max placed a hand on Ben's shoulder, his grip reassuring. "We won't fail. We can't." As they returned to the clinic that evening, exhausted but hopeful, they found Dr. Ethan waiting for them with a warm smile. "I saw your posters," he said, "and I've already had a couple of calls from people interested in the pups." The group's faces lit up, their doubts momentarily forgotten. "They're just inquiries for now," Dr. Ethan added, "but it's a start. You kids have done something incredible." That night, as the puppies slept peacefully in their blankets, Max, Lily, and Ben sat in the clinic, surrounded by their remaining posters and plans. They were tired, and the road ahead still felt daunting, but for the first time, they allowed themselves a flicker of hope. Because sometimes, even in a small town where not everyone understands, the smallest acts of kindness can set something bigger into motion. The posters fluttered gently in the crisp winter wind, pinned to lampposts, shop windows, and notice boards across the town. They were hard to miss, bright drawings of 5 adorable golden retriever puppies, each with a hopeful plea for adoption. Max, Lily, and Ben had poured their hearts into spreading the word, but what they hadn't expected was for someone to actively try to undo their work. It happened late one afternoon, just as the sun dipped behind the snow-laden pines. Max and Ben were rechecking the posters they'd put up along Main Street, making sure they hadn't been damaged by the weather. Lily trailed behind them, clutching a fresh batch of posters to replace any torn or missing ones. "Wait," Ben said suddenly, his voice hushed. He pointed toward a woman near the corner of a local cafe. She was young, possibly in her mid-20s, with dark auburn hair tucked under a knitted beanie. But what caught their attention wasn't her appearance, it was what she was doing. She was tearing down one of their posters. "Hey!" Max called out, his voice sharp with confusion. "What are you doing?" The woman froze, the crumpled poster still in her hand. For a moment her expression flickered between guilt and defiance before she turned on her heel and walked briskly away. "Come on," Max urged, and the three of them took off after her. They followed her through the quiet streets of the small town, past rows of snow-covered houses, and toward the edge of the woods. The woman glanced over her shoulder once, her pace quickening as she realized she was being pursued. Finally, she slipped into a clearing surrounded by tall evergreens, stopping abruptly when she realized there was nowhere left to go. "Who are you?" Max demanded, panting slightly from the chase. "And why were you tearing down our posters?" The woman sighed, her shoulders slumping in defeat. "Look, I'm sorry, okay? I wasn't trying to hurt anyone." Lily stepped forward cautiously, her voice soft but firm. "Then why were you taking them down? Don't you want the puppies to find homes?" The woman's eyes darted between them, her guarded expression slowly giving way to something deeper: regret, shame, and a hint of fear. "You don't understand," she said quietly. "Those puppies, they're mine." Her words hung in the air, heavy with implication. "What do you mean they're yours?" Ben asked, his voice filled with disbelief. "You abandoned them in the middle of the woods." "I didn't have a choice," she shot back, her voice breaking. She looked down, unable to meet their eyes. I didn't want to leave them, but I had to. It was the only way to keep them safe. The group exchanged puzzled glances. Max crossed his arms, his skepticism evident. Safe from what? The woman hesitated, her hands trembling slightly. Finally, she took a deep breath and began to explain. My name's Ella, she said. I used to work at a place, a breeding facility. Most people would call it a puppy mill. I didn't know what it was at first. They told me it was just a kennel, a place where they bred dogs to sell. But it wasn't like that. It was cruel. They didn't care about the dogs, only the money. Her voice grew quieter, tinged with pain. The mothers were kept in cages, forced to have litter after litter. The puppies that weren't perfect, they didn't last long. I tried to help where I could, but it wasn't enough. I felt trapped. Lily's eyes widened in horror. That's awful. Ella nodded, her expression grim. One night I saw them throw out a litter, your puppies. They said they weren't worth keeping because they were too small, too weak. I couldn't let that happen. So I took them and ran. But why didn't you take them somewhere safe? Max asked, his tone still edged with frustration. Why leave them in the woods? Ella's voice cracked as she answered. I didn't have anywhere to go. The people who run the mill, they're dangerous. If they found out I took the puppies, they would have come after me. I thought, if I left them somewhere, someone would find them. They'd have a chance. Ben, who had been silent until now, spoke up. You could have just gone to the police. Ella laughed bitterly. Do you really think they'd believe me? A former employee of a puppy mill? They'd think I was part of it. Her words hit them hard, the weight of her situation sinking in. She wasn't just someone who had made a bad choice. She was a victim of a system that thrived on cruelty and fear. Lily stepped closer to Ella, her voice soft but steady. You tried to save them. That's what matters. Ella looked at her, tears welling in her eyes. I failed. I left them out there in the cold. If you hadn't found them. But we did, Max interrupted, his tone gentler now. And they're okay. Dr. Ethan's taking care of them. They're safe. Ella's shoulders sagged in relief. Thank you, she whispered. I've been so scared. I didn't know if they'd survive. The group stood in silence for a moment, the gravity of Ella's story sinking in. Max finally broke the quiet. You said the people who run the mill are dangerous. Do you know where they are? Are there still dogs there? Ella hesitated, then nodded. Yes, there are dozens of dogs still there. Mothers, puppies. They're suffering. Max exchanged a glance with Lily and Ben. The idea of more dogs enduring the same cruelty as Tiny, Sunny, and the others was unbearable. We have to do something, Lily said firmly, her usually gentle voice laced with determination. But what can we do? Ben asked, his uncertainty evident. Max clenched his fists, his resolve hardening. We can't just let this go. We need to stop them. Ella looked at them with a mix of gratitude and caution. I'll help you, she said, but you need to be careful. These people, they won't go down without a fight. As they walked back to town, the snow crunching beneath their feet, the group felt the weight of what they had just learned. Ella's story had revealed a darkness they hadn't expected, but it had also given them a new purpose. For the puppies, and for all the dogs still trapped in that terrible place, they would find a way to make things right. The wind howled through the narrow streets of the small town as Max, Lily, Ben, and Ella sat huddled in Dr. Ethan's clinic, the weight of Ella's revelations pressing heavily on their minds. The puppies, now nestled safely in their blankets, slept soundly, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing outside, both in the weather and in the hearts of those determined to help. Ella's voice was quiet but steady as she outlined the grim reality. The mill is on the edge of town, hidden behind an old barn. They keep the dogs in cages stacked on top of each other, in a building that's freezing in the winter and scorching in the summer. The conditions are horrific. Lily's eyes filled with tears as she imagined Tiny, Hope, and the others enduring such cruelty. We have to do something, she said, her voice trembling but resolute. Max nodded, his jaw tight with determination. We can't let them keep getting away with this. We need to stop them. The group decided to act quickly. Max, ever the leader, suggested they involve the police. This isn't something we can do on our own, he said. We need backup. Ella hesitated, her hands clenched into fists. What if they don't believe us? Or worse, what if the mill owners find out and move the dogs before the police get there? Dr. Ethan spoke up, his calm demeanor a grounding force for the group. The key is evidence. If we can show the authorities what's really happening, they'll have no choice but to act. Ben perked up at the mention of evidence. I can take pictures, he offered. If we can sneak close enough, I can capture what's going on in the mill. Max looked at him, impressed by the courage Ben was showing. That's a good idea. We'll need to be careful, though. The next morning, with the snowstorm finally cleared, the group set out. Ella led them to the edge of town, where the old barn and the hidden puppy mill lay concealed behind a curtain of frost-covered trees. They stayed low, moving quietly through the underbrush until the mill came into view. Ben's breath caught as he raised his camera. The scene before them was worse than they had imagined. Rows of cages filled with dogs, mother dogs with matted fur, shivering puppies, and older dogs with eyes that seemed to have given up hope. The air was thick with the sound of whimpers and barking, a haunting symphony of despair. Take the pictures, Max whispered, his voice barely audible. We'll use them to make sure the police take this seriously. Ben nodded, his hands steady despite the fear coursing through him. He snapped shot after shot, capturing the undeniable cruelty of the mill. With the evidence in hand, the group rushed back to town and made their way to the sheriff's office. The sheriff, a gruff man with a skeptical expression, listened as Max and Ella explained the situation. At first he seemed unconvinced, but when Ben showed him the photos, his demeanor shifted. This is bad, the sheriff admitted, rubbing his temples. Really bad. But I'll need more than just these pictures to shut them down. We'll need witnesses. Dr. Ethan stepped forward. I'll testify, he said firmly, and so will the kids. We've seen enough to know that those dogs need help. The sheriff nodded, finally convinced. All right, I'll gather my deputies. We'll head there tonight. That evening, as darkness cloaked the town, the sheriff, his deputies, and a handful of volunteers from the town, led by Ella and Dr. Ethan, approached the mill. Max, Lily, and Ben stayed back at a safe distance, their hearts pounding with a mix of fear and anticipation. The raid began swiftly, with deputies storming the barn and catching the mill operators off guard. Dogs barked and yelped as cages were unlocked, and the once silent barn became a flurry of activity. But not everything went smoothly. As Max watched from a distance, he spotted one of the mill operators, a burly man with a scowl etched into his face, grabbing Brave, who had slipped out of the clinic to follow Max. The man held the puppy tightly, his grip threatening to harm the tiny dog. Max's blood ran cold. Without thinking, he sprinted toward the man. Let him go, he shouted, his voice shaking with anger. The man sneered, tightening his grip on Brave. Get lost, kid. Max didn't back down. Fueled by fear for Brave's safety, he lunged forward, grabbing at the man's arm. He's not yours, Max yelled, his determination overpowering his fear. The commotion drew the attention of the deputies, who rushed over and restrained the man. Brave, shaken but unharmed, wriggled free and ran into Max's arms, licking his face with gratitude. By the time the raid ended, dozens of dogs had been rescued. The once silent barn was now filled with the sound of wagging tails, grateful barks, and sighs of relief. Ella stood near the entrance, tears streaming down her face as she watched the dogs being loaded into trucks bound for safety. We did it, she whispered, her voice filled with awe. We really did it. Max, still holding Brave, looked at her and smiled. You gave us the chance to help. Without you, we never would have known. Lily and Ben joined them, their faces glowing with pride despite the exhaustion. We couldn't have done it without all of us. Lily said softly. And without the puppies, they gave us the courage to try. That night, as the group returned to the clinic, they were greeted by Sunny, Lucky, Hope, and Tiny, who had been left in Dr. Ethan's care. The puppies barked excitedly, as if sensing that something wonderful had happened. Max knelt down beside Brave, stroking its soft fur. "You're safe now," he murmured. "All of you are." The events of that night taught Max, Lily, Ben, and even Ella a profound lesson. Courage isn't always about grand gestures. Sometimes it's about standing up, even when you're scared. It's about refusing to give up, no matter how impossible the odds seem. And as they looked at the puppies they had fought so hard to save, they realized that those tiny, trembling creatures had shown them the true meaning of bravery. The aftermath of the raid on the puppy mill rippled through the small town like a beacon of hope. For the first time in years, the old barn stood empty, its cages dismantled and its cruel owners facing justice. News of the rescue spread quickly, and the once hidden story of the dogs captured the hearts of everyone who heard it. For Max, Lily, Ben, and Ella, the mission wasn't just about shutting down the mill. It was about giving the rescued dogs a chance to live the lives they deserved. And for the 5 little golden retriever puppies that had started it all, their journey to finding love and safety had only just begun. Finding forever homes. Over the following weeks, Dr. Ethan worked tirelessly to ensure the puppies were healthy and ready for adoption. Sunny, the brightest and most energetic of the group, quickly won the hearts of the Johnson family, who had recently moved to the area. Their young daughter couldn't bear to be apart from Sunny, and her parents agreed to also adopt Lucky, the more timid but equally sweet pup. "They've been through so much together," Mrs. Johnson said, stroking their soft golden fur. "They should stay together." Sunny and Lucky wagged their tails in unison, as if they understood they were about to embark on a new chapter of their lives, together. Brave, who had become Max's constant shadow since the night of the raid, seemed destined for a life of adventure. When a retired soldier named Mr. Harris visited the clinic, he immediately bonded with the courageous pup. "I've been looking for a companion," Mr. Harris said, his voice warm but tinged with weariness, "and I think this little guy might be just what I need." Max hesitated as he handed Brave over, his chest tightening. "Take good care of him," he said, his voice firm but shaky. Brave gave Max one last nuzzle before turning his attention to Mr. Harris, his tail wagging excitedly. Tiny, the smallest and most fragile of the group, found a home with a family who specialized in fostering animals with special needs. Their gentle, patient approach gave Tiny the comfort and care it needed to thrive. "Tiny's going to grow strong," Lily said, her voice filled with hope as she watched the little puppy leave with its new family. "I know it." Hope, true to its name, became a beacon of joy for a family with 3 young children. The puppy's playful antics and dreamlike demeanor brought laughter and light into their home. The children adored Hope, and their parents were grateful for the way it brought their family closer together. New beginnings for the team. For Max, the experience had been transformative. He had spent weeks helping the puppies, organizing the rescue, and even standing up to the mill owners. It was more responsibility than he had ever taken on before, and it left him with a newfound confidence. "You've grown up a lot," his mom said one evening as Max helped clean up the clinic. "I'm proud of you." Max smiled, his gaze drifting to Brave, who was curled up at Mr. Harris's feet nearby. While Brave had found a new home, Max had gained something just as valuable, a sense of purpose and the courage to face challenges head on. Lily, deeply moved by the plight of the rescued dogs, decided to channel her compassion into action. With encouragement from Dr. Ethan, she signed up for a summer program at a local animal rescue center. "I want to help more animals," she told her mom, her eyes shining with determination. "I want to make a difference." Her experience with Tiny and the other puppies had opened her heart to a world of possibilities, and she couldn't wait to begin her journey. Ben, who had always been the quietest of the group, discovered his voice through photography. His pictures from the puppy mill raid had not only convinced the authorities to act, but also inspired others in the community to get involved. "I didn't think I could do anything important," Ben admitted to Max one day, "but now I know I can." He started sharing his photos online, joining a group of young animal advocates who use social media to raise awareness about rescue efforts. For the first time, Ben felt like he had something valuable to contribute. Ella's redemption. Ella, whose courage in revealing the truth about the puppy mill had set everything into motion, found a second chance as well. The town rallied around her, helping her find a safe place to live and a new job at the local animal shelter. "I thought I'd lost everything," she confessed to Dr. Ethan one day. "But now, I feel like I've gained a family." She continued to visit the puppies, grateful for the role they had played in her redemption. A quiet moment of reflection. One snowy afternoon, Max, Lily, and Ben gathered at the clinic to say their goodbyes to the last of the puppies. The room felt quieter without the chaos of wagging tails and playful barks. But it was a peaceful kind of quiet, one filled with hope. "They're all going to be okay," Lily said, her voice steady. Max nodded, looking out the window at the snow-covered town. "And so are we." Ben smiled, holding his camera close. "I think this is just the beginning. The lesson of courage and kindness." As the weeks turned into months, the impact of their actions continued to ripple outward. The puppies had found their forever homes, and the town had become more united, inspired by the bravery of 3 kids, a kind-hearted vet, and a young woman who refused to give up. The story of the little golden retriever puppies wasn't just about saving them. It was about how they had saved everyone who touched their lives. They had taught lessons of courage, responsibility, and the power of kindness to change the world, one small act at a time. And as the first blossoms of spring began to push through the melting snow, the town felt just a little bit brighter, a reflection of the light those tiny puppies had brought into their lives.